Welcome, Cory Rosenke, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
No problem. Today, we're going to be talking about your work. You are a pastor and you're an author. The books that you write are going to be helping people understand the cravings of their soul, helping them with joy, happiness, and the spirituality that they can be having in their life. In your own words, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help them?
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, my name is Cory Rosenke. I am a pastor and an author. And really, what I'm on a mission to do right now is to remind people that more than a brain or a body, they are a soul. And if they truly want to understand peace, happiness, these words that we use all the time, these things that we know we want to pursue, and yet they're ambiguous words. What is happiness? You ask 10 people, you'll probably get 10 different answers. What is peace? You ask 10 different people, you'll probably get 10 different answers. The truth of the matter is when we use these words, we don't actually know what it is we're looking for. And because we don't know what we're looking for, we have a world that is scouring the globe, looking for peace and happiness, and thinking they find it for a moment and then it's gone. And then thinking they've attained it for a season and then it's gone. And so my goal has been to help bring definition to who we are and what we're looking for.
No, beautifully said. Because there's certain words that we can just say that, okay, this is success. Well, what does success mean? This is happiness. Well, what is happiness? What is fulfillment? What is love? And everyone might have a different inkling for it, especially if you have a different type of upbringing. Because maybe for you, happiness is just spending time with family. But yet, maybe happiness can be going on trips, and spending a lot of money. Maybe that is not as fulfilling as family as you learn maybe later on in life. But we all have an aspect to what we initially think success is, happiness is, these words. Do you think that the words or the definitions that we give ourselves, or when we look at a word like this and we try to define it, do you think it's more tailored to our upbringing and our experience, or is it more of what we see in the world?
I think it is both. And I think that it is learned coping mechanisms ultimately. And as you mentioned, we have some people will say it's in family, some people will say it's in travel, some people will say it's in the diploma on their wall, right? Or how much money they make. And yet for each of us, all of those are vulnerable places. And so we can never feel secure in our happiness. We can never quite feel secure in our peace because we're ultimately looking for them in vulnerable places. What I have what my passion is to help people say, okay, what is peace? Peace is not a matter of personal opinion. It is clearly defined. Now, unfortunately, most of the world has lost sight of or never knew that definition. And the same is true of happiness. As you mentioned already, my book is entitled The Magnetic Heart of God, Understanding the Five Cravings of Your Soul. And I believe in understanding the five cravings of our soul, we finally understand what we're looking for. We can finally put names to what we're looking for and why one of us is finding satisfaction, at least temporarily, in family, and why one of us is searching for satisfaction in travel or whatever it is. When we can name it, we actually have a chance of attaining it because we actually know what we're looking for. And I believe that it's a small nuance that changes everything to finally understand this is the reason for that ache inside me. This is the reason why I attained what I thought would bring me happiness and it didn't. It did for a short season and now it's gone. I can now name it because I know what it is.
Well, I would love to know those five cravings, and then we can have a general discussion. We don't have to like break them down individually because I know that can be a bit daunting for people because it's like, okay, I got my five cravings, but sometimes just a general understanding of the five together, I think is going to lead to a really healthy conversation.
I'll happily actually run through them quickly for you. Obviously, in the book, I go into more detail and talk about them philosophically and psychologically and theologically, and tie it together in an aspect of faith. But I also want to state this. These are what I call soul cravings. I think it's very interesting to me how if you talk to the vast majority of people in the world today believe in a soul. They believe in an ambiguous soul, a soul that it's like a mystery. We don't know anything about it. And really, there's kind of this idea, I think, within us that thinks that our soul is something that activates after we die. And I would say nothing could be further from the truth. Right from the earliest ancient times up to now, we've been losing this knowledge progressively as we go forward. There has been this awareness that more than a brain or a body, we are a soul. Before I get to the five cravings, and yet most of us live our lives looking to satisfy the cravings of the body and the brain. It is our cultural obsession. It's what every television commercial is promising you. It's what every politician tries to promise you. They're trying to cater to the cravings of your body and your brain. And meanwhile, these cravings in our soul are going on, their needs are going unmet. And ultimately, I believe that that is the reason for the chaos in the world today. We look at the world and just think of this for a second, Michael. We live in a time of unprecedented prosperity. And by that, I mean like never before in the history of mankind has the generations like the generations alive today been granted access to wealth opportunities, to comfort, to leisure, to entertainment, to education, to world travel. We have more than any generation in the history of mankind, and yet virtually every study shows that we're more unhappy than ever. You look across the globe today, your community, heck, probably your family, and you see depression, you see anxiety. Despite all of our educational advances, you see confusion. And when you look at our culture, under the surface, I believe that there is this building rage. I think we all sense it. This, I don't want to quite call it anger, but I think it's getting to that point. It's building and building. Anything could go off at any moment. And we say, how is this possible? We have more than any generation in the history of the world. And not only that, when we look through all of human history, we've been told that if we would just get to the top of that financial mountain, we would have peace. Right? If we would just get to the top of that sexual mountain, if we would get to the top of that educational mountain, whatever it is, that we would find peace. And ours is the generation that has reached the summit. We've looked around and we said, there's nothing here. We've been promised this for all these decades, for all these millennia, for that matter. And we've reached the summit and there's nothing there. And again, I believe the reason for that is, number one, we haven't been able to identify the cravings of the soul. And number two, in our modern era, we have recategorized a soul craving as a psychological craving. And when we do so, we do not go as deep within ourselves as we need to if we're going to truly find peace and happiness. So that's the preamble. And so the 5 cravings of your soul, I can just spit them out quickly. As I say in the book, I go into much greater detail. The craving for security. Every human being on earth is looking for security. And I break security down into 2 sections. So we're looking for physical security, which what we would call is our will to survive, right? Our survival instinct. The reason we dodge, when something gets shot at us or thrown at us, that's survival instinct. So we have physical security, and then there's relational security. And that is to say, we need to know that our hearts are safe in the hands of those who hold them. And we can literally be driven to a point of madness when that security fails. And that is not just a psychological craving. That is a craving in the very depths of our being, of our soul. So number 2, we're all craving identity. And I believe identity asks 4 symbiotic questions. Who am I? Why am I? Do I have value? And do I have purpose? And we can have all the securities in the world, but if we don't know who we are not at peace. We can't find peace. Again, this is not a psychological craving. This is a soul craving. And we are the only creature on earth that has this craving, this need to know who we are. To a certain degree, for those who believe in a evolutionary type idea of existence, the craving for identity just makes no sense. Why is it that I cannot be happy unless I have this personal awareness of identity? But it is powerful, not a psychological craving, a soul craving. Third, security, identity, independence. And I break independence again into 2 parts. The one part of it is freedom. We all need to have some sense of autonomy. If someone tries to over-confine us, over-restrict us, we can't handle it. We have to bust out, which is why prison itself is a punishment, because it's a confining, right? The first half of independence is freedom. The second half is individuality. That is to say, I need to know that I am distinct, that you and I are separate. We can be connected as friends, but we need to know there's something about, ourselves that is distinct. That's why there's even those identical twins, for who seem to like getting the same haircuts and wearing the same clothes. At some point, all of them will come to a point where they have to know that something about them is distinct. Maybe they're the athletic twin or the twin who loves Lego, right? Or the intellectual twin, whatever it is. We all need to know there's something about us that is distinct. And if we don't feel that, we will feel redundant. We will feel unseen. We will feel without value. Security, identity, independence. Fourthly, significance. We all need to know that we are not just distinct, but special, that there is something about us there is something that we have to offer that no one else has to offer. And again, for Usain Bolt, he's the fastest man in the world. You know, when the day comes when he's not fastest man, he's going to feel both a punch to his significance and probably to his identity. For someone else, it's just they make the best chocolate chip cookies in the family, right? Or for someone else, they shovel the driveway better than anybody else. It doesn't have to be something big, but we all need to know that we are significant. We are special in some way. And again, we can have all the security in the world. We can know who and what we are. We can have freedom. But if we don't feel there's something special about us, we are not at peace. We cannot experience lasting happiness. And fifthly is innocence. There is deep within us the desire to feel that not just that we are not guilty, but that we are good, that we are righteous. Just think of this for a second, Michael. Basically, every argument you've ever had, or any offense you've ever taken, took place because you felt that someone was subtly or not so subtly insinuating that you were guilty of wrongdoing or wrong thinking. Maybe you left the socks on the floor. Maybe they said you were late for work. Maybe you're on the freeway and you merged and someone honked at you. And you feel this thing that rises up inside you, even if you are guilty, even if you were late for work, even if you didn't signal and you merged, you feel this thing inside you that does two things. You either have to flee, you want to get away from there because you can't be around someone who makes you feel guilty all the time, or you want to fight. You want to say, oh yeah, well, maybe I left my socks on the floor today, but you left all that laundry in the bathroom, right? And the righteousness war, as I call them, kind of rise up within us. These 5 cravings, security, identity, independence, significance, and innocence, are the core factors in all human movement, all human ambition, all human decision-making. If you are a salesman and you want to figure out how to sell to people, you need to sell them security, identity, independence, significance, innocence, right? If you are a spouse and you want your husband or your wife to feel loved, I'll tell you what they're looking for. What love is. What are you looking for in love? Security, identity that doesn't conflict too much on your independence, significance, and innocence. That's what drives people towards a marriage relationship or a long-term relationship. And it's also what drives people towards divorce or to leave a relationship because they didn't find it there. These are what we are looking for. It doesn't matter if you're a coal miner or a politician who's reached the upper echelons of the government, right? Or someone working at a gas station or an architect. This is what we are searching for. And we search for them in different ways. As you just mentioned, for some person, for whatever reason, their coping mechanism, they are looking for independence or perhaps significance somehow in travel, right? They got to get out there. They're trying to scratch that itch. Other people, they look for it in family. Family is where they find identity and security. Family is a place where they feel they are accepted and they are considered righteous and good and elevated. Other people, it's the opposite. They don't want anything to do with their family because it is not safe. They do not want to identify with them. It's a place where they feel guilty, they feel small, and they run away. It is so fascinating how, I don't want to say it's definitely not easy, but all of a sudden, when we look at these 5 cravings, we know what we're looking for. And we ask the question, why is my sister mad at me? Well, there's all sorts of possible reasons. Well, you banged her car and didn't confess it. And then, of course, we start throwing out all of our names, which we try to tear people down with. Narcissist, sociopath. You know, I hate these words because honestly, I believe that most of the time, the person who is calling someone those names is actually being abusive because you're tearing someone down. It's not to say that they aren't real things, but we use them so easily when what we should be doing is looking at them and saying, listen, I know there's friction between us. And now I know where it is. I don't have to search the world or ponder and wonder about you. You're looking for security, identity, independence, significance, and innocence. That's why your sister won't talk to you. That's why your neighbor left their spouse. That's why your boss comes into work and he's a total jerk. That's why the other guy at work is a snitch. You know, and on it goes. I now understand you. And now that I understand you, I actually have a chance to connect with you. Now that I understand myself, I actually have the opportunity to point myself in the right direction to find happiness and peace.
With great power comes great responsibility because now that we know these 5 cravings of the soul, we can use it for positivity, we can use it for negativity. We can use it for building, or we can use it for destruction. Because if we understand what a person truly wants, what their soul craves, we can deny everything their soul craves.
you just hit the nail on the head. And that ultimately is the definition of evil. If we think of what is a good person versus a bad person, a good person is someone who extends or offers or protects the security, identity, independence, significance, and innocence of someone else. A bad person or an evil person or the villain in all the movies is someone who threatens or withholds or manipulates security, identity, independence, significance, and innocence in someone else. Again, these cravings in and of themselves aren't good or evil. They simply are. They are our reality. What we choose to do with them, how we choose to pursue them, is what will ultimately defined as good or bad, as righteous or sinful, or whatever language we want to use.
And this is what we have to look at. One of the words you said earlier was anger, right? We finally got to the peak of society, right? We have the wealth, we have the ability to go experience the world. And now we're angry. I would like to add an emotion, a feeling, frustration, because maybe you get there and you're like, I just did all that work. Maybe. I know many CEOs who sacrifice their family, sacrifice, long days to build their business, and they finally have a wealth of money. And maybe they have been sacrificing their health. And now they're spending all the money that they accumulated to get back their health. It's almost like a catch 22. It's like we are going toward a goal, toward a desire that we think is going to give us happiness. And then we finally lose something that we had, our health, and then now we're trying so fervently to bring it back. What is that type of mindset?
Well, and not only that, then we have to justify it. We have to say, like you said, I sacrificed my health, I sacrificed my family, I sacrificed my friendships in order to climb this corporate ladder. And now I'm here and I'm realizing I'm not happy. And yet we come to the innocence thing. Innocence or significance could be either one. I can't admit that to myself, or I have a hard time admitting it to myself. Why? Because if I admit to myself that I foolishly pursued something and left a wake and a trail of destruction behind me, that's not very significant. That doesn't make me feel significant. That makes me feel like a jerk. It definitely doesn't make me feel innocent. It makes me feel guilty because, again, I sacrificed. My kids didn't get to know me the way they should have got to know me. And now they have all these issues themselves too, because I committed to this path. And now I'm becoming aware of the destruction that it actually caused. That's where I believe a good therapist, good counselor, good coach comes in, because I believe that the purpose of a good counselor, good therapist, good coach is to help people heal from the wounds that took place in looking for satisfaction in all the wrong places, and then to set healthy pursuit methods in front of them. And so they can begin pursuing these things in a healthy manner. But the truth of the matter is, Michael, we are way less creative than we like to think we are as human beings. Where are we looking for these satisfaction for these cravings? Well, throughout history, throughout all of time, we've looked for it in money, wealth. We think if I just get enough money, I'll be happy. No, you won't. I saw an interview with Elon Musk a while ago, and the interviewer asked him, "Are you happy?" Elon Musk, the richest man who's ever lived in human history. There's nothing on this earth he can't have. He paused for a moment, he looked down, and he said, "I don't think many people would want to be me." This is like, what? This guy there is nothing that can be withheld from him. Canadian comedian Jim Carrey. I'm sure you know who Jim Carrey is. I heard a quote from him a while ago too, and he's actually been very adamant with this. He's said this a lot. He says, I wish that everybody could experience wealth and fame so that they would realize that's not the answer. There's nothing there, right? But we look for it in wealth. And then when we get a certain amount of money and it doesn't make us happy, what do we conclude? We generally conclude, you know what I need? I just need more. More money will make me happy. And so we get more, and it doesn't make us happy. So what do we conclude? I need more. It's just this self-destructive thing within us. Same thing. You know what I need? I need power. If I had power and control, I would be at peace. And we get power, and it's not enough. So what do we say? I just need more power. And we can go on and on. Wealth, power, fame, sex, intellect, feel smart. And for those of us, we see this loud in our culture today, who haven't found it in all these places. We say, you know what? I'm going to try to numb this craving with alcohol, with some sort of drug, with marijuana, whatever it is. Just give me something so I can try to numb this craving within me, but it's not going away. And so what do? Well, I need a harsher drug, or I need to keep taking this because I can't live. I can't function with this ache inside of me. And it's just, that's why the world is doing what it's doing. That's why we're pursuing the strange things that we are.
This is good to understand because when someone is so focused, especially on career, as I was saying earlier, we sacrifice our life. And you are correct. It is typically for wealth, for some type of abundance. We believe money is going to be the solution for all of our problems. And there's so many people in the world who reach great amounts of wealth and they say this is not it. If we look at people looking for glory, Robin Williams, rest in peace. He was the same type of soul, very similar to Jim Carrey, where it's just like he said, you don't know loneliness until you're in a room full of people and you're all by yourself. And it's so powerful and so profound that we think money can bring us happiness, and it can for a moment, right? But that's just the superficial stuff. Look at Charlie Sheen. He has a lot of people around him, he has a lot of substances around him, and it's all because of money. And if he didn't have it, it's very likely that he wouldn't have the artificial happiness that he's giving himself. But yet, many people, we know that there's a fire on the other side of the door, yet we're trying to open the door. The door is closed for a reason. The door is stuck for a reason. There's a reason why the doorknob is hot. It's saying, don't go there. But yet, many people are stubborn. We are reluctant. We are gluttons for pain. And what does that do to the soul? It damages it. And now we have to repair the soul. How would someone begin that process to repairing the soul and then to start to look at the things that truly matter?
Well, I think in order to answer that question fully, I have to add a sixth element. So we have the five cravings of our soul. And then we have, and again, we're batting 100% here. There are no exceptions in the world to this rule. We have this sixth element, this influence that steps in. In the different faiths, they often will call it sin. In philosophy and psychology, it is oftentimes called the fatal fantastic element. And that is to say this, there is, along with these five cravings that are propelling all of us through life and time, there is this sixth element that steps in that is self-destructive. You give human beings something beautiful. And again, we're batting 100 throughout all of history, and we will somehow figure out a way to tear it apart. You give us perfect unity, and we will find a way to shatter that unity. You give us happiness, and we will find a way to break that apart. And so I think what we need to understand about ourselves is, first off, we have these five cravings that inside of us, again, we can't do anything about, you can't suppress them for long. This is what you are looking for. And then there's a sixth element that enters, the fatal fantastic element, or sin, or again, like I said, whether you're a person of faith or not a person of faith, use whatever, verbiage works for you. There is within us this thing that propels us towards self-destruction. And when we understand this about ourselves, and I ultimately believe that we all instinctively do, we are all, oftentimes, Michael, I'll be on a television show or a radio program or a podcast, and the first question I get asked is, what evidence do you have that we have souls? I often start by saying, you are your own best evidence to start with. There is something within you that knows that you exist beyond biology. And not only that, consider this. Every culture that we've ever known of has come to the same conclusion, that we exist beyond biology. Religion, in fact, I would say the reason there's so many religions of the world, it's been different cultures' attempts to explain what they know about themselves. They have this truth about themselves. Every culture, without exception, there has never been at the birth of a culture the idea of non-spirituality, that we are just simply biological beings. That's something that has simply developed in the last couple centuries. Prior to that, there was no such thing as that. We all intuitively know that we exist beyond biology. And so I think the first reason for people to heal their soul, they first have to acknowledge that they have one, and they have to acknowledge this truth about themselves. And I think that's a starting point. And then the second thing is to now know what you're looking for, because for the longest time, they've pursued it in education, right? If I just get this diploma on my wall, I will have peace. And again, we're batting 100. It's like, no, that's not what brings peace and happiness. Again, maybe for a season, right? Maybe for a moment, but then it's empty. Then you're just in this endless pursuit of something else, to the point where, think of this, there's a saying that goes around, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And while there are certain things about that I think are true, and I think that to a certain degree that can be helpful in certain settings, at the same time, we're admitting I can't get to what I'm looking for. And so it's like we try to psychologically convince ourselves it's about the journey. It's about the journey. Well, what if you can have both? What if you can have both adventure and attainment? And I believe that you can, now that you know what you're looking for.
No, this is all powerful because when we start to ask the question, is the soul real, right? Because just one of the questions you said most people are asked, like, is it real? And I like to think of it as I'm going to be dead longer than I'm alive. And that means my soul is present because I am understanding that. Why do we bury our dead? Okay. Sanitation reasons. One, for us to put our soul at peace. I'm sure you probably heard of the phrase, a bit of me died before that day, that night, whatever. Is that the soul dying?
That is the soul, I believe. The soul doesn't die. To start with, I believe that because we are body, mind, and soul, we are two parts mortal, one part immortal in that sense. And again, people may have different faiths, and so they have a different idea on what that may particularly look like. But what I believe we're saying is, yeah, my soul, at least for a moment, has resigned itself to defeat, and you can't find happiness there. And so something needs to revive it. Something needs to breathe life back into it. And just it's so important for me to get the word out to your listeners as to what it is they're looking for. That ultimately is what's going to bring that spark, what's going to bring that revelation. And ultimately, it's that revelation that's going to revive the soul. Now that you know what you're looking for, now that you know what your spouse is looking for, now that you know what your both your favorite politician and your most reviled politician are looking for. And that gives you the capacity to love them. That gives you the capacity to negotiate or understand or to let go of certain things because you know, hey, this is what they're looking for. And I can understand that. And because I can understand that, I can enter into a more healthy relationship with it.
There's a difference, I believe, to physical and spiritual pain. For example, let's say I have a pain because I have a toothache. I can maybe take a drug. Maybe I can numb myself and just start to forget about it. I can maybe acclimate to the pain. But yet sometimes we have a harsh moment in our life. We lose a loved one, maybe even like a career that we thought was going to bring us happiness. It can be a huge painful blow to the soul. What's the difference between physical pain and soulful pain or spiritual pain?
Oh, I think you pointed it out there. That soul pain is what brings you to a point despairing of life. It is the deepest pain. I've heard people say that the survival instinct is the greatest of all instincts, and I would argue adamantly with that. There are so many people who have tragically or heroically at times given up, completely sacrificed their physical body, right, for the sake of something spiritual in nature, love, the desire to protect someone, the desire to put a hedge around someone. And there are so many examples of people who have sacrificed their physical selves in order to protect their spiritual selves or someone else's spiritual selves. And ultimately, spiritual pain is the deepest of all pain. At the same time, spiritual joy is the highest of all joy. Again, the release of dopamine to the body feels good. But again, that is a reaction to the soul inside of you lighting up. And I don't want to go too deep in the weeds with this, but I honestly think that this is where, and there is a change. I believe there is a shift. There is an awareness that is starting to come, specifically in the psychological practices, is that you cannot help people find any lasting happiness by simply going brain deep. And you have to go deeper. I often say that in my own personal journey, Michael, I will say this and I'll just kind of philosophy. I was asking the question at a very young age of why, the big why, looking at the world and wondering why, investigating my own heart and wondering why. The question of why led me to philosophy, which is a beautiful and delightful study. But the answer of why is not there. Philosophy led me to psychology. The why is not there. Psychology led me to neuroscience, which is a fascinating study, right? The neuroplasticity of the brain, the effect of brain chemicals, dopamine, serotonin. It's all a fascinating thing. But ultimately, the study of philosophy, psychology, neuroscience is the study of mechanism. It's not the study of source. It's not the study of why. We have to look to the soul. We have to look deeper within to find that question of why. And then all the external stuff, the psychological stuff begins to matter and the neuroscience comes into play. It's helpful to know, hey, when this happens, it releases this chemical in my brain, right? Which makes me smile. But ultimately, that's the study of mechanism, not source. It's like cutting in on dominoes kind of halfway down the line and studying how they work, but it doesn't answer the question of what knocked them over to start with. Or I'll oftentimes put it this way. Imagine if we had never seen a car before, never had any idea about a car, and all of a sudden we're looking at a car. I say philosophy is like the curve of the hood, the shape of the headlight, we're looking at it from kind of an external point of view. Psychology is like looking at the adjoining ends, the tie rod ends, the drive shaft, steering wheel, those kind of things. Neuroscience is looking at the oils and the electrical system. It's amazing as all that is. The car does nothing without the driver. The driver is what will determine if that car goes forward or back or right or left or whether it does anything at all, right? And that's the soul. And yet our modern culture today has spent so much time looking at the car and forgetting the crucial significance of the driver. The driver is the key to it all. And again, that's been my passion of recent years, has been to communicate this awareness to people so that they can then hopefully do something about it.
One of my final questions as we begin to wrap up, there is a question beyond the question I asked, right? The physical pain and the soulful pain. Most people, when it comes to trying to get help to change their life, if they feel like they're on the wrong path, they feel like they're going downhill, most people are going to wait until something big happens in their life, a big trauma, right? Something happens that just tips them over. Is that physical pain or soulful pain for them to take action finally?
Well, and I think that was where this may or may not answer your question. So what I don't want to suggest is that we're a brain and a body and a soul, and the soul is all that matters. To heck with the brain and the body. Ultimately, especially while we are what we call alive, functioning, walking around here, we are a collaboration of three parts. And if one part hurts, they all hurt. If one part feels joy, they all feel joy. I'll just give you, this is where I'll bring neuroscience maybe into play on this example. I'm going to say this. I have this soul inside of me that is the boss. The deepest decisions you make in life don't come from the brain and the body. They come from the soul. But the soul gives directives to the mind gives directives to the body, and the body then does what it does, right? And so to a certain degree, the soul is filtered through the mind, and then the mind is filtered through the body. And so when it comes to hurt, when it comes to the ability to change, number one, we need to look to our souls and understand what we're looking for. And number two, then we're going to bring because there's the whole filter system here, we have to understand the way the brain works. And I'm sure you are aware of this. In neuroscience, if you think in a specific direction enough times, it literally forms a pathway in your brain. And so when the neurons fire, they fire down this groove. And so when you decide you want to change, when you decide you want to bring change, it's not simply a matter of, because you have now the soul and the body working in tandem, it's not simply a matter of the soul having this enlightenment. That is the most important part. That's the beginning of it. But now you have this groove in your brain that maybe has been forming over 1 year. It's amazing, actually, the neuroplasticity of the brain, how these grooves can form so quickly. Maybe it's over your entire life. Maybe you have, and literally, as you have probably heard about, different parts of your brain, the fear center in some people's brains will literally be larger than other people's brains, because that's the direction that their thoughts have fired for so long. And so that takes time. That is the beauty of having a counselor, a therapist, a coach, someone to walk alongside you, because your brain is going to always be like, I have to defend myself and get angry. That's what it's always done, right? Your soul now knows it needs to do something different, but your brain, it just triggers that defensiveness and anger, whatever. Let's use that as an example. And that's where you need people who care about you friends, family, or healthcare professionals to come alongside you and help you until your brain adjusts that shape and changes that groove. And it will. I mean, that is the beautiful thing about, like you said, the neuroplasticity of the brain, the ability for it to change, literally change shape due to trauma or self-discipline or something good, but that will take time. Understanding that those things, the soul and the body and the brain, are ultimately going to work in concert. The reason I keep harping on the soul is because that's the core of who we are, but that's what all of us have forgotten about. We've literally forgotten what it means to be human.
And I believe everyone has a specialty. For me, is mindset. I focus on the mind quite a bit. And you're right. We are all three of those: the body, the mind, and the soul. Think of it as the four tires that we have on our car. If one is flat, you're probably not going to go far. All right. And if you do, you're going to destroy the tire. Typically, people will pull over, they would repair the one tire that needs some fixing. So whether that be the body, the mind, the soul, we begin that repair. In a sense, we can hurt our body, we could hurt our mind, we could hurt our soul. And to be honest, we can even hurt them all at the same time. And that could be definitely an extreme situation. But we do have to be mindful that we are an accumulation of all of that.
If I could say, talking about your mindset and your focus on mindset, absolutely. I can tell you that the driver is the most important part. I mean, if you don't have an electrical system that works, right, you ain't going anywhere, right? Or you're going to signal to the left, but it's actually going to show the right, and you're going to get in an accident, right? So absolutely, it all works in concert with each other.
And that creates the harmony, because if something is in balance, just think of food and water. Okay. I want you only to drink water, eat no food, or vice versa. Eat only food and drink no water. There is a balance that we have to have. And sometimes we don't necessarily think about it because it's just one of those automatic things that we just naturally do. I feel thirsty. I feel hungry. And then sometimes you have that yearning for a hug or for some love. That's the soul right there asking.
Oh, you just nailed it. And just think about that. Even like, let's say the craving for thirst. Like we just take it for granted, or we're even annoyed by it. If you didn't have a craving for thirst, you'd be dead in 4 days because you'd probably forget to drink water. You get about doing, but that craving for thirst compels you to go and to drink water and stay physically alive. And I believe that same is true with us with the cravings of our soul. It's the same purpose. When you feel that anxiety, that frustration, your soul is telling you it needs nourishment, right? Give me security, give me identity, give me independence, significance, innocence. This is what I'm looking for. And that ultimately drives us toward happiness and peace and life, just like thirst and hunger for the body.
Exactly. And the conversation we have is just the opening for people to start to look at those three aspects of themselves, because we have, in a sense, been neglecting ourselves, maybe all three, and maybe especially the soul. But today can be the day that we give some mindfulness, some awareness, and we can begin to look at what our soul's craving and then begin to take some action toward it. As we begin to wrap up, I would love to have some final words from you and then for you to tell the audience where they can find you.
I guess I would tell your audience this. It's the new year. A whole lot of people are making resolutions to lose weight, to go to the gym. That's all great. That's all. As we said, we're three-part beings. That's part of it. But don't neglect your soul. And I would encourage you, each of your listeners, you are not the reflection looking back at you in the mirror. You aren't the number on the weigh scale. You aren't the diploma on your wall. You aren't the balance in your bank account. More than a brain or a body, more of these external things, you are a soul designed with a purpose, a soul that is looking for something very specific. And when we finally understand this about ourselves, it changes everything. If you want 2024 to be radically different than 2023, your focus on the soul and pursue the things that you now know it's looking for.
Beautifully said. And how can people find you?
Yeah, the best, easiest place is CoryRosenke.com, my website. That's kind of the centralized place there. You can learn more about the book there. You can learn more about myself. You can contact me even if you wanted to directly on the website there. The Magnetic Heart of God, Understanding the Five Cravings of Your Soul. It's available everywhere worldwide. So if you just type that, whatever store is closest to you, just type in the Magnetic Heart of God and it should show up somewhere close to you.
Perfect. And I'm going to make it easy for everyone. The link is going to be in the description box below to your socials, to your website, and to the book for people to inquire about how they can look at their soul this year. And I believe you are correct when we have to look at 2024, because this is a big year. It's an election year. It can cause a lot of frustration and anger. But yet, if we can look at what our soul is craving, if we can look at what what the world is needing beyond just us, I believe people are going to be in a better mindset overall. And then they can truly realize that life is more than just this moment. It's going to be even after this moment when we're dead and gone. This is where the soul comes in. This is where the soul shines, I believe, because like I said earlier, we're going to be dead longer than we're alive, but we do have to do the work today to make sure our soul is thriving and not craving for attention. I want to thank you so much, Cory, for coming on, spending some time with me today, and talking about your work.
Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity.